So Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams is not only facing the second suspension of his short NFL career, but news broke that he could potentially be in even more trouble, but this time with the law because of something that happened earlier this month. So I've got to talk about that, another trade that happened, as well as some miscellaneous injury news from around the league right after. All right, first up, there was another trade that took place yesterday after the Diontae Johnson news broke. He was traded from the Panthers to the Ravens, and it's definitely worth talking about. The Minnesota Vikings traded a 2026 conditional fifth-round pick to the Jaguars for left tackle Cam Robinson and a 2026 conditional seventh-round pick. That fifth-round pick from the Vikings can turn into a fourth depending on playing time, and the seventh-rounder from the Jags can disappear altogether. Also, depending on playing time, though I'm not exactly sure what the threshold is in terms of how much playing time will alter those picks. Either way, this move clearly signals that Minnesota is still going for it this year despite losing 2 games in a row. I mean, it makes sense. They're still 5-2. And more importantly, they just lost their franchise left tackle in Christian DeRuse with a torn ACL as well as a torn MCL in last week's game against the Rams. DeRuse was off to another great season and had the 10th highest PFF grade among both left and right tackles this season before he got injured. So you had to go and get somebody. Robinson isn't going to give them the same level of play that DeRuse has, but he's an experienced veteran that started over 90 games through 8 seasons in the league and is certainly better than any other options the Vikings had on their roster. It makes sense for both parties, honestly. The Vikings get a solid replacement for DeRuse, and the Jags get some future draft capital for a guy they were unlikely going to re-sign after this season anyway, as he's on the final year of his current deal, and the Jags probably don't want to pay an aging lineman when they're likely headed towards a bit of a rebuild. Someone who appears as if he's going to need to rebuild his reputation is Lions receiver Jameson Williams, who's sadly back in the news again for all the wrong reasons. He's already serving a 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's PED policy, and now there is a warrant request for his arrest. To be clear, this isn't an active warrant yet, but prosecutors are reviewing a warrant request issued by the Detroit Police Department on the charge of carrying a concealed weapon in a motor vehicle. This actually happened back on October 8th when Jameson and his brother, who was the driver, got pulled over for some kind of traffic violation. The officer asked his brother if there were any weapons in the car, and they were truthful. Williams' brother said there was one in the back seat and one underneath Jameson in the passenger seat. The gun in the back seat was registered to Williams' brother, and he had a concealed pistol license, so all was good there. However, the one underneath the passenger was registered to Jameson Williams, but he did not have a concealed pistol license, at least according to the report. And I'm no lawyer here, but it looks like if you're carrying a concealed weapon without a concealed carry license, this could potentially be a felony charge, which is not great news. However, the reason why we are just now finding out about this is because Williams ended up being let go from the scene with no official arrest being made, and the pistol was even given back to him. Basically, Jameson Williams repeatedly told the officers he was a player for the Lions once they found out about the gun, and he was initially placed in handcuffs and put into the back of a patrol vehicle, but body cam footage showed one of the officers who arrived on the scene a bit later making several phone calls about the situation. One of those calls, I believe, was to a lieutenant, and while we don't know what the lieutenant said, you can hear the sergeant say, "Okay, I'm good to let him go. You're an effing hero, thank you so much." After this, Jameson was actually let go, even being given back his gun. I mean, the gun was registered to him, but still, per the law in Michigan, you can't carry a concealed weapon without a concealed pistol license. Then, no police report was written and no warrant request was submitted. However, 7 News Detroit somehow sniffed this incident out and started asking questions that caused the Detroit police to launch an internal affairs investigation regarding this situation once they learned about the second gun found under Williams' seat. The police chief wasn't happy to find out about this either. I guess initially he was told there was only one gun, and it was the one in the back seat, not the second one found under Jameson Williams' seat. And once he found this out, he was pissed off, basically, and that's when he agreed to share portions of the body cam footage with 7 News Detroit. Since then, Williams has sought out an attorney, and his attorney released a statement that said his clients were pulled over for an alleged traffic violation. Both clients were cooperative and respectful with the officers, and both the pistols found were properly registered, and the driver in the vehicle had the proper credentials to carry them. So I think that's a big question. Does the concealed pistol license that his brother have properly cover both of those guns, even though they both weren't registered to him. Now, the Detroit police also put out a statement yesterday saying basically that they are now revisiting the manor since it's now been discovered, and they've kept the league informed of what they know. As for how this affects Jameson Williams, I'm assuming the NFL is going to let the legal process play out here until they make any decisions. But come on, man, he's already been suspended twice, so Jameson's on thin ice as it is. Then if you're going to carry a gun that's registered in your name, you might as well get your license to carry as well, since that is the law in the state of Michigan. Too late now, though, and from here, all we can do is wait for the legal process to play out and see what the NFL decides to do after this. Williams is set to return from his suspension next week, I believe, and Dan Campbell said today that he's been truthful with the team. He's got to learn from this, but they seem good with him at this point in time, which I took to mean the team won't be disciplining him, which makes sense to me as the process continues to play out. Next up, Drake Maye was a limited participant in practice today, which is a good sign as he suffered a concussion in Sunday's game against the Jets, but it means he's progressing through the concussion protocol and has a chance to play this Sunday. But if I'm the Patriots, I don't know why you would want to rush him back. They're 2-6 and have zero chance of making the playoffs, so why risk re-injuring your franchise quarterback that you just drafted 3rd overall this year? I would think they let him sit this week and opt instead to trot out Jacoby Brissett so he can remind everyone once again why they need Drake Maye to be healthy for a long time. In fairness to Jacoby, he did play well in their win over the Jets on Sunday, but we all know this man is not the future of the franchise. Honestly, it's a sucky situation for Brissett, but at this point in time, it just is what it is. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Panthers are reportedly sticking with Bryce Young at QB despite Andy Dalton being back from his thumb injury. He'll be on the active game day roster and is going to back up Bryce Young, who's coming off his best game this season, though that's not really saying much considering he threw for 245 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 3 picks in his first 2 games combined. Yes, combined. Last week, he was playing against one of the best defenses in the league in the Denver Broncos and managed to throw for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns, although he did throw a couple of interceptions as well. Next up, the Cowboys got some good news today, and that is cornerback DaRon Bland is being activated from IR and could make his season debut as soon as this week against the Falcons. He had surgery for a stress fracture in his foot back in August and has yet to play in a game this season. If you remember, last year Bland set the NFL record with 5 pick-sixes in a single season and is a key piece of their secondary alongside Trayvon Diggs. He'll definitely be a welcomed addition to the Cowboys defense that has been atrocious this season. They're allowing 28 points per game, which is 2nd worst in the league. Unfortunately, though, it looks like Micah Parsons is set to miss his 4th game in a row with the high ankle sprain he suffered back in Week 4. Mike McCarthy said today that he is improving, but he's not yet ready to practice. Another team that's dealing with a plethora of injuries is the Green Bay Packers. The most notable, of course, is Jordan Love, who exited Sunday's game against the Jags with a groin injury and did not return. Well, he was not seen out on the practice field today, and neither were 3 of their starting offensive linemen, with those being left tackle Rasheed Walker, left guard Elton Jenkins, and center Josh Myers. For what it's worth, Jordan Love spoke to the media today and said it's realistic that he can play this Sunday, but of course that's the player saying that and not the medical staff or the coaches, so we shall see about that. Then, Josh Jacobs, Jair Alexander, and Evan Williams were all DNPs today as they are working through injuries themselves. A lot of injuries for the Packers, basically, and they are playing the Lions this Sunday with the winner claiming the top spot in the NFC North, at least temporarily. So this is a massively important game, and if Jordan Love isn't able to go, then it will once again be Malik Willis under center, whoever that center may end up being. Then the Cardinals will be getting their starting right tackle back here soon as Jonah Williams, who is currently on IR with a knee injury he picked up in Week 1, had his 21-day practice window open up today, and he's expected to return sometime within the next few weeks. And finally, somebody who is heading to IR is Michael Pierce, as the Ravens nose tackle left Sunday's game against the Browns with a calf injury, and unfortunately, it's severe enough for him to head to IR. John Harbaugh told the media today, though, that the injury is not a season-ending one, which is good news. That move, by the way, cleared up a roster spot for the newly traded forward Deontay Johnson, as that trade is now officially official. And with that, that is all the biggest news and updates I have for you from today, and I'll see y'all next time.